Welcome to Genre Chat. I'm Cherrilynn and your host. This week we are talking about romance. Now, guys, if you write thriller or suspense, every novel needs a little bit of romance. So our guest this week is Donna Smith. She's going to tell us how to add romance to your novel. Donna, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing career.
Well, first of all, Cherrilynn, thank you so very much for inviting me for this genre chat. I appreciate the opportunity. I've been writing on and off for about 40 years since college when I did a MASH script and it got the best grade in the class. And I was like, wow. So, but on and off because I had trouble making a living at it. So, I had to have a real job in between. But about 3 years ago, I made a decision to go for broke. I mean, really go for broke this time and see if I couldn't write something, get it published. Actually, well, I'll get into that later. But anyway, I just said, so I'm going to go for broke this time and see what happens. And I live in Pennsylvania, and I've been married to a wonderful man for almost 30 years.
Wow. Oh, congratulations. That's awesome, Donna. Now, we're talking about romance. So why did you choose this specific genre?
Well, I think it's every young woman's dream to be Cinderella who finds her Prince Charming. At least it was mine when I was a little girl. You'd see, I grew up in the area of the Disney animated Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Snow White, all of that. And it was like, that was every young girl's dream, is to grow up and find her Prince Charming. But it's also a very compelling genre because I just recently, I don't know why I waited so long, but I recently joined Romance Writers of America, rwa.org, and they have some very interesting statistics on their website that 1/3 of all book sales in fiction per year are romance, and that was from 2015. And it accounts for romance books sales account for about over $1 billion in sales a year. So it's a very strong and ongoing genre. And like I said, I think every girl wants to meet her Prince Charming. And the fellas, some of them are romantics too.
Yeah, yes, they are. They truly are. I've read a few books that are really suspense thrillers, but there's some good romance in them written by men. So, men do like romance, which is good. So what was one of the greatest lessons or a few of the greatest lessons you've learned while writing in this genre?
Well, I think the first thing you have to be is creative, and you have to think out of the box, because romance is basically a formula. It used to be called boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl. I would change that up in this time period. I would say girl, because most of the time the girl is the main character, the lead. She meets boy. Lots of problems before they get together. And then finally, the girl gets the boy in the end. And that would be my modern day formula for that. So that's a formula, but within that, there's an awful lot of creativity that you can have. And then in your romance genre, you have your subgenres of romantic suspense or historical romance, which is where I write. I loved Westerns. I grew up on like Bonanza and the Virginia and all of those, and I just loved them. And so that's when I decided to write a novel. I am a Christian, so I asked the Lord, what on earth could I write about? And this little phrase came to my mind: gunfight at Hyde Park. And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, I think there was a bad gunfight in my hometown. I had a little history lesson when I was in like 5th grade about the origins of my hometown. Well, when I Googled it, I found out that it was more than one gunfight. It was a series of gunfights over a 10-day period that killed and wounded more people than at the OK Corral. But I thought, how can I put that in? And then, of course, it's got to have romance in it because I'm a romantic. I think I always have been. And so how am I going to put that in? So I took some more training through Christian Writers Guild and put together this novel that's going to be published in about 3 months.
Oh, congratulations. That sounds like one I'd like to read. I have to say I don't do a lot of reading and I need to do more. I actually scheduled more reading into my day because it's with all the schooling and work, it's hard for me to find time. But I love learning when I read. So that is so your book would be one I probably would read, definitely. So, what is the hardest thing about writing romance?
Hardest thing is thinking outside that box. You know, you got your basic formula there. So what can you do to switch it up? Especially in my novel, in historical novels, the girl has to be out on her own in some way. Like usually the father gets killed, or the father dies before the beginning of the book, or her father's a jerk, or her male authority figure is a jerk, sells her for money to the right or wrong guy. And it's like, okay, now that I have read a lot of books in the last several years. And that was a formula that I started seeing in historicals in particular. And it just, I thought, couldn't they do any better than that? So I decided I was going to do better than that in my book. So my novel is called Megan's Choice, and Megan's father is a nice guy. He loves his daughter, but this is 1871.
Yeah.
And so how do I think about out of the box? I've decided to make her dad a nice guy, but she's immature. She needs to grow up before she gets married, because otherwise her marriage won't last who knows how long. And of course, in 1871, you were stuck for life, whether you were in a happy marriage or not. So, you know, that was the challenge. It's thinking outside the box, thinking of something different that maybe you haven't seen before. I've only seen one other author have a good dad that didn't sell their daughter for money, or didn't die.
Yeah, there are a lot of good dads out there. I've met so many good dads. I mean, there's bad dads too, but to have a good dad that really is concerned, that's wonderful. That is thinking outside the box. Now, any other tips in writing in this genre? I mean, should you add other aspects to the story beside just romance?
Well, you got to know, basically, I'm not a plotter. So I've had two mentors. I've had a plotter and a half pantser for mentors.
Can you tell us what, for people who are watching, I know a lot of people know what a plotter and a pantser is. I actually just learned what they were less than 2 years ago. So can you explain that a little bit?
A plotter is someone that plots out, like one of my mentors has this humongous corkboard on her wall, and she takes these little 3x5 cards and she writes out the essence of every scene, and then she sticks them on her corkboard. Every scene in her book, I couldn't do it that way, but that's what she does. And she's called a plotter because she puts them on her board. Now she can change the order around, but she has to know before she writes even the first sentence, she does all this work. I couldn't do that.
I know, I feel the same.
And then you have Stephen James, who has no idea what he's going to write. He sits down and whatever comes out, it comes out. He's called a pantser because he's writing by the seat of his pants.
He's the one I was talking about that has some romance in his books. I love his books. Some people might say they're a little, I love them because they're true to life. I mean, if you're talking about murder and all that stuff, they're true to life. Now, I think I would consider myself, I think Jerry Jenkins calls it a plantser, like a plotter and a pantser at the same time, a plantser.
That's
getting back to romance, and thank you for explaining that for us. Getting back to romance, are there any books that people can read to be a better romance writer besides reading a lot of romance books themselves? Are there how-to books?
Thing I would say was read a lot of whatever you're writing, and read a lot. And it's good that you're putting in more time for your reading, Cherrilynn, because that was the first thing I was told when I wanted to become a writer was read a lot. So I've been reading a lot, and I know it because if you're going to write in whatever genre you're writing in, you have to know what's out there. Because especially when you start putting together a book proposal, you need to know who's like you, who's different from you. And if you don't have enough reading, if you haven't read enough, you don't know that. But one of the very best books that I would suggest would be Romance Writing for Dummies.
That would be for me.
This is written by Leslie Wenger. Yeah,
I've heard her name before.
She's at the time she wrote this, she was the executive director of Harlequin Books, and they are the premier romance publisher in the world. I mean, that's all they do is romance in whatever subgenre it is. So that would be my first one. And then I found another book called Romanceology 101. I have it on Kindle, so I can't really show it. But it's by Julie Lessman. She is a Christian, but she if you want to write even a clean romance, that would be the book that I would suggest. Julie Lessman, Romanceology 101. And she's very entertaining in her writing, and she uses a lot of examples in what you can and cannot get away with, but how to keep that romantic tension, the different kinds of romantic tension. And I really liked her book. I copied so much of it off my Kindle that they quit letting me copy anymore. Just for my own benefit, But those are the two that I would say. There are lots of books out there. There's a couple of phraseology books that I also bought, but they can get a little bit unclean. Or a little bit too explicit. So
I always thought romance had to be that way. And then when I became a Christian, because that's why I never read them. And then when I first started praying I pray about what I read. Yeah. And the Lord put on my heart to read my friends' novels. And so I started reading Lisa Bell Castro. Do you know who Lisa Bell Castro is?
I've heard her name.
She's a good friend of mine. She writes history, romance, historical romance, and she's got some great ones called Shenandoah, a Christmas one, and they're really, really good. They're really written well, and they're good. And Lisa Bell Castro, a lot of people may not have heard her name, but her stuff is good. In fact, I recommend that you read some of her stuff. Not because she's my friend, but because she's good. And then I read, I just read stuff like I'm going to read stuff from you, but that's what the Lord put on my heart. Read the people you know first. I mean, of course we should be reading the bestsellers, but that's what I've been doing, and I've been enjoying it. And I can't wait to read your book. So, Donna, who's your favorite author in this genre?
I can't just nail it down to one. So what I did was I nailed it down to two different subgenres.
Oh, great. You're so prepared. I love it.
Well, I read a lot of historical romance, especially Westerns, and I read a lot of romantic suspense, which are contemporary. And those are my favorite two subgenres. And I'm always reading those. And in the Westerns, Mary Keneally is she was the first one that I ever read in the historical Westerns. And I love her. Her tagline is romantic comedies for cowboys.
I like that.
Well, funny. I mean, the stuff, her situations are very, very serious, but the way she writes is just comical. You're laughing all the time through all these, her characters deal with serious things, but the way she puts their thought life in there, in her deep POV and things like that, it's just hysterical. And
what's her name again?
Mary Keneally, Connealy. And in the Western genre, she's one of my favorites.
Mary Keneally. Okay.
Mary Keneally. And
I like to laugh, so maybe I'll read some of her too.
Read the Kincaid Bride series. That was the first series I ever read of hers, and I think it's one of her best. So I really liked those.
And who's the other person?
Well, Misty Beller has become my second favorite in the Western genre because I think she's kind of like half flower, half pantser. And I know that one thing Stephen James says when in story trump structure is don't be afraid to put your major characters in peril. Well, she's not afraid to do that. Yeah, there it is, story trump structure.
I got it right here. I got it. In fact, I had him, I love his writing, and I had him sign it when we were at the retreat. At the conference. He's a great guy, very approachable, and a phenomenal writer.
Yeah, I met him last year in Asheville at the retreat. I'm
going to try to get him on this. I'm going to try to get him on this program. I've emailed him. So yeah, he's a really great guy. That's what I love about some of these writers. They're just so approachable.
They are.
Okay, so we only have a few more. Believe it or not, we only have a few more minutes left. So we talked about your favorite author. We talked about your work in progress, and I'm really looking forward to that. Do you read? You told us what you read for fun. Do you read anything for fun beside romance stuff?
No. So I read historical westerns, and I read romantic suspense, and that's what I read for fun.
That's great. Now, do you have any parting words of wisdom for someone who wants to get into romance writing?
Let's see. I have some notes if I can find them. Oh yeah, there it is. Everything I could say sounds cliche, especially when it was being fed to me several years ago. I was like, but keep writing, keep persevering, keep learning, because you never know. I'm a Christian, and you never know what God's going to do to that. I mean, you never know. So, I mean, it was just a miracle how all of this has come together, that I'm actually getting published. And it all started because I went to a conference 3 years ago and met Jim Hart. Now, they turned me down the first time. And then a year later, I'm having Jim and Joyce at a little Pennsylvania writers conference. And at the same time, they're recruiting somebody to take the place of a retired agent. And all of that just came together so that I got a second look. I got an agent out of it. I think you did too.
Yes, I did. I did. Now, you mentioned something that's so important: rejection.
Ooh.
Can you talk about that for like a minute? Ooh. I mean, not everybody gets rejected, right? I mean, that's just.
Oh, everybody gets rejected, and then there are some of us, like me, who are born with rejection issues that are harder to get over.
Yes, me too.
And some of us are challenged with a couple of weird rejections, like I was. I could tell you. I'm not going to tell you on camera, but you have to just move forward to that. I came up with a little formula that says the first thing you have to do is just forgive. If there's weird with it, if there's malice with it, you just forgive that, and then you just give yourself time to heal, and then you move forward. And so my goal is, how fast can I get past it?
Yeah. You know, one of the very first things I learned about writing was from Lori Rolleveld: expect rejection. Yeah. And it's not a personal thing. Don't take it personally. If you get rejected, it could be because that publisher is not looking for what you've submitted. But if you get rejected 10, 15, 20 times, then you might want to reevaluate what you're writing, or reevaluate your book proposal. But Donna, I want to thank you so much. I mean, it's gone by so fast.
I know.
And you've taught us a lot. I really, I like your formula for the new way of writing romance, and I like the way you said to think out of the box, because maybe think of some of the romances that have been around you and that have been pertinent in your life, but it's not always the same formula. Like I think of Disney, where Disney kills off all the people's mother. Like there's hardly ever any mother in this, but it seems to be working for them. But now they're doing other things. But how can people contact you? And can people contact you with questions? And give us your website and Facebook and email, Not your phone number, because we don't want you getting crank calls.
I don't give that.
I don't give my phone number out either, only to my clients.
Exactly. Well, my email is my initials. I go by Donna L.H. Smith. And that's my pen name. That's my name. And so they can email me at dlhwriter@windstream.net, or they can go to my website, donnalhsmith.com.
Can you say that one more time?
Oh, yes. My email is DLHS and then WRITER @windstream, all one word, .net for email. And then my website is donnalhsmith.com.
Thank you so much, Donna. I've learned a lot. And please be sure to contact her. Don't hesitate if you have a question about romance writing. And you can always go read her romance articles at almostanauthor.com. She's just started a new column. She's our new columnist for romance. So that's almostanauthor.com. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us for this week's Genre Chat.